So I've been doing this a couple of years now. It's kind of a goofy little video. I don't know how much we actually take into it, but it's still something I enjoy making. So this is going to be, can previous years help us predict who will win the Super Bowl this year? I'm going to look at very specific things about Super Bowls from years past and talk about if that can help us predict what can happen this upcoming Super Bowl. So, for example, teams that score more, as in offensive points per drive, teams that did better in the regular season at offensive points per drive, have won 18 out of the last 29 Super Bowls. So, offensive points per drive, that helps you win Super Bowls. Makes sense, right? Scoring helps. Same thing with defensive points per drive. Not quite as significant. There's a one win less thing there, but still very, important. And of course, net points per drive, it's all kind of around the same, interestingly enough, as you have a better chance than not, if you are well in these categories, to end up winning the Super Bowl. However, this next one is not quite as straightforward, and in fact, we have a few that I think are more unique and maybe don't go in the way you would expect. Teams with a better record actually lose more often than they win. They've only won 6 out of the last 20 Super Bowls, which is fascinating. You would assume teams with a better record, you're more likely to win the Super Bowl. That has not been the case. Now, is this just happenstance? It's of course possible. We are dealing with small sample sizes. Inherently, it's always difficult to tell with previous Super Bowls because, on one hand, you could simply just look at this and say, well, why aren't you using the whole sample size of the Super Bowl? There's been over 50 Super Bowls. The issue is that, Super Bowl IV was basically a different sport. I don't know how much we want to take into account that, but at the same time, if we're only doing the past 20, well, then that's also, it's smaller sample size now. When you're talking Super Bowls, you're talking smaller sample size, but let's just wonder, is there actually a reason for why this could be the case? I can come up with some guesses. The biggest guess I would have is that, you get to the Super Bowl, you haven't really been punched in the mouth. You have an extra week now, so a ton of time to prepare. If you're a team that, has not had to grind it out the way a team that's lost more has, potentially it's just, more, maybe even a mental thing, but you know how to react when things go wrong. It's also possible that, I don't know, I would assume that if you're a competitive team with a championship aspirations, probably having more losses in the regular season would benefit you, because that means that you're going to have a good week of practice the next week, right? You're going to say, we can't let that happen again. We have to make sure we focus on it. You've had your weaknesses exposed and maybe know how to cover them up. Whereas if you have a better record, maybe you haven't been punched in the mouth and you don't know what your weaknesses are, and maybe there'll be something that you weren't prepared for going into the Super Bowl. So in this situation, okay, Eagles and Chiefs have the same record, so who cares? But you could argue the Chiefs actually have the worse record than the Eagles because Jalen Hurts has only lost one game this year. Their other two losses came with Gardner Minshew. So, I think you can make the argument that actually the Chiefs are the one with the, worse record, which would actually be a benefit in this scenario. Another one that's the inverse of what you might expect is better quarterback season, as, in recent history, teams with a better quarterback season have actually lost a good chunk of the Super Bowls. I mean, they've lost twice as much as they've won in the past 24 years. Why is that? Why is that the case? Well, again, could just be happenstance, but let's assume there is a reason. The reasoning kind of makes some sense, right? When you're going up against, in the Super Bowl, you're going up against really good teams, and sometimes a great quarterback can take a not as good team to this point in which they would eventually lose in the Super Bowl. And again, who had the better quarterback season this year? It's debatable. Obviously, Jalen Hurts and Mahomes were both awesome this year, but I think most people would say Mahomes was a little bit better on the year. Again, Hurts missed a couple games, so that's why Mahomes wins the MVP. I would give the edge to Mahomes, which, again, in this scenario, you could kind of point to being why sometimes having the better quarterback season doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win. Again, it certainly helps. You like having a Mahomes, and again, you still have a third that have won from this situation. But potentially part of why this could be the case for Philadelphia is simply just the fact that, they're a loaded team. They have all of the parts, whereas the Chiefs aren't as complete of a team, but kind of got here because their quarterback willed them here. But now maybe, I believe they are underdogs right now. So you can see how the logic could happen. But again, Also possible it's just random. These are more fun than they are, telling. The Vegas favorite is also always a fascinating one, as the Vegas favorite tends to win the Super Bowl over the course of history, over the course of, the first 56 Super Bowls it has gone, where 37 of them have been won by the favorite. But in the past 21 years, it's just 11 and 10. So while yes, historically, this has been a situation where the Vegas favorite tends to win, in recent history, it's actually been a lot closer. And again, it's worth mentioning the first 30 Super Bowls or so were seemingly all blowouts. Again, I don't get how anyone watched football 50 years ago, because it seems like every game was it was just a different sport. And there were like double-digit Super Bowls, the lines constantly, several years ago. Now it's a rarity if you get more than the field goal line heading into the Super Bowl. So that's also part of why maybe it's, it looks to be dramatic, but in recent history, not so much. So the final verdict, the final list here, this is going to be not which team leads in each category, but which team, I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase it, but which team ends up being benefited from being in the category. So for example, the better record, I'm giving the edge to Philadelphia, saying they had the better record, but now Kansas City shows up on the list because that means that it favors them, as teams with the worst record are more likely to win the Super Bowl. That's how that works. I know it's a little confusing, but yeah. So defensive points per drive, the Eagles definitely have an advantage over the Chiefs, but it's not by much. Offensive points per drive, same thing. Chiefs have a bit of an advantage over the Eagles, but not by a ton. And then net points per drive, the Eagles have an advantage as well. And again, net points per drive, that's just basically, we take one offensive drive and one defensive drive. After that, how many points do you lead on average? Eagles, very good in that category. The Vegas favorite is the Eagles, so that favors the Eagles. The better record is the Eagles, so that favors the Chiefs there. And then a better quarterback season is Mahomes, so that then favors the Eagles. So the Eagles lead in 4 out of 6 of these categories. What does this all mean? In the past 2 years I've done this, it's been right both times, so my guess is it means not a lot, but maybe a little bit. Maybe it can help us, if anything, just kind of realize why the Super Bowl tends to go the way it goes, and it's always fun to look back and look at history and all of that stuff. But is this what I really think is going to, am I taking a ton of stock into this? Not really. Am I taking a little? Yeah, taking a little into it. But yeah, that's what I think about all of this. Again, it's just fun stuff for me, at least. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching. If you like movies, check out my movie review channel. Every single movie title you see on the screen, I have a video about coming out within the next 2 weeks. I'm uploading a video every day for 2 weeks, so definitely make sure you're subscribed there. The link is in the description below. I got some other stuff on there too, some like breakdowns of certain scenes I like and things like that, so check it out.